All right.
Thanks, Nitin. Welcome everybody to our April 20th meeting. Today we're going to go back and we're going to revisit our digital portfolio management, something we've been talking about since pre-release of it. And I want to go into a little bit more depth today just on how we can get started with these. And I've been watching how some people, some different customers are getting started, and I put together some thoughts on how maybe these little tips and tricks will help you get the ball rolling with the digital portfolios. Before I start, we always like to go through and just kind of talk about what the group is doing, because we have a lot of people that are new, that are coming to the meeting for the first time. And also this has been changing a little bit. This year we changed it to really focus a lot more on the digital transformation instead of just specifically digital services. We're instead of looking at those services themselves and building them and structurally, we're trying to shift this year to more of how are we getting the value out of these things and how are we using them to better run the business. And so we do have these meetings every other week. We've been having them since 2018. So June of 2018 is when we started. And our mission is really to help all the members to drive these digital transformations, right? To be key players. Depending on where you are, right? There's going to be different things you're doing in the digital transformation, but we're trying to have a broader set of information across that group of people. So the shared work we have is all kinds of discussions and papers. There's videos. Somebody's not muted. Okay. And those are available on a Google Drive. We are transitioning to, we're trying to get those over to a community because it's a little bit messy now with how much we've grown, trying to keep that all in a Google Drive. So we're looking at a community right now, and hopefully in the next few meetings we'll have our own community on ServiceNow. So this is hosted, it used to be hosted by myself and a couple of schools that we started together. Now it's hosted by my team, which is the Enterprise Architect team. And our sponsor is Jeff Lube. So he runs Enterprise Architecture for the AMS region, which is the Americas in ServiceNow. That's a little bit about our group. If you're here for the first time, welcome. And if you are here for the first time, if you can just go ahead and put your name and your company name inside of the chat and let us know who you are. And this way we give the opportunity for the other members to welcome you. And if they hear from you, they kind of know where you're from. So we can go ahead and start some collaboration with you, which is a big reason why we're here. So the group, a lot of people get things in this 1 hour, but also there's been a lot of breakouts where people go do their own thing, maybe in their industry or maybe cross industries. So it's a really good thing to introduce yourselves and just, let us know why you're here. With that, let's dive into the agenda today. So we are going to go into digital service portfolios, and I said this is an area we've been spending a lot of time, and it's for good reason, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. And I'm going to do a couple little demos in between, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about some real-world examples. So I have Elle from Montana and Kelly from Utah, who are both on, and neither one of them are fully deployed with DPM yet, but we've been thinking about it and kind of kicking the can around a little bit to see, where do we actually dive in with these. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And the area that I'm going to talk about today. All right. Well, what I'm going to do today is really focus on this one area. I don't know why I'm getting the backgrounds there. This one area I'm going to focus on, we're just going to talk about this little piece of the CSDM today. We're not going to go into other areas. I might make mention of the connection back to the other areas, but we really want to focus on this one key space, because this is a part where we can start interacting with the BRMs and the customer service manager, right? The people that are actually getting the service provided to them. And that's a good place to start. And if you do the crawl, walk, run, fly in the Common Service Data Model paper, they do give the option of starting here, right, or starting here with the business apps. Those are the two suggested starting points for the CSDM. So what we're going to do is we're going to start here today and take a look at that and actually run through one example so we can get an idea of what it looks
You're
like.
You're not presenting anything.
John, I can't see anything. I just see you.
I am not hitting too many buttons today.
Been there myself.
How about now?
Great.
That's better.
Great.
All
Yeah.
right. So what we're going to do is, like I said, focus on this one area with these four key components that we're going to tie together. And it looks a little bit different. So this may be first time for some of you seeing it who aren't on San Diego yet. We're going to use the service builder today to do some of that. All right, and I think somebody's admitting people in the lobby for me. Yeah, looks like everybody's in. All right, let's jump over, and I think that takes us in to our first little mini demo. And I'm going to go ahead and use the central instance. So any of this work that I do, we'll be able to come back to the central instance. For those of you that haven't been in here, that's a little bit different, right? We have our workspaces now, and we have the San Diego view. And also we have the Polaris view, so you can go to dark theme on this too, right? So when I go into my digital portfolio management, there's the option of changing it to light or dark, and I have it on the dark mode right now. Okay, so what we're going to do first is go ahead and let me leave that guy open, and we're going to come back here and go into the underneath service portfolio management. There's now a service builder. And that service builder, we now have two main builders. So some of you have been in building application services. This is going to be the service builder we use for the business services. All right, so when you come into this one, right, it's going to give you, this is a workbench for building out all your services. So these are going to show you the services I've already built out. And I'm going to go ahead and be able to create a new business service. So what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and create a business service that, and we're going to go ahead and view this in the I'll just call it a HR. I'm going to call the services, I'm going to say this is our human resources, right? So it's just going to be our HR services. It's an internal service. I'm not going to worry about the portfolio right now. As a minimum starting point, right? We're not going to worry about that today, but we are going to be able to view it in a way that we're going to give the owner a nice view of it. This service is in the pipeline right now because I'm just building it.
Let's go back, guys.
HR services for employees. And down here, you can express the business case, right? What you're actually doing with it. So the business need is basically to keep employees, or to give employees access to their info. I'll just put that on there for now. Okay, now as you go through this wizard, it's going to now ask you, okay, who's the team around this service? Okay, and that's what we want to do at a minimum. We want to go ahead and define the team. So if the delivery manager, I could say it's Bill, and the BRM, right? Because somebody's building this service out, or somebody's responsible for picking in the ongoing requirements, right? So you usually have a BRM that's responsible. And then the business contact, that's that person that I showed you in the picture before, right? We want to get that business contact that is sitting right here, that person that manages that service. We want to get them inside here as well, because that's the person you want to be able to give this view to in the beginning. So I'll just pick somebody out of here as our business contact. Sometimes you may have a vendor, and then other times you have other stakeholders that want visibility into this as well. So here we can go name the stakeholders. Now, in conversations, as you're doing this, and this is one of the things I heard a CTO say the other day, we don't have our services defined in an organized way where we can start to say, you know, what types of things are we measuring, or what type of policies do we have against it? Now, for now, I'm going to say this service performance, we don't really need this in the beginning because the service performance is more when it becomes operational. And what we're going to try to do is say, is the minimum product that we can use, the minimum view on these services, can we do it before operations? Can we give people views of it before operations and have it be useful? And now in HR, we need to come down and start to say, what are the individual offerings underneath this? So what it does now,
John, can I take a step back for a sec? The
Sure.
teams. So we have the roles in that that visual you showed, right? But it doesn't seem like necessarily the teams that are represented in this wizard are the same teams or people represented in that chart. So is it really just a matter of the organization to decide ServiceNow calls it this, but our organization is going to call it this?
Yeah, we do have the BRM, right? That one
yeah,
is.
But I'm thinking the customer service manager as the business contact. I feel they're two different people.
Okay.
So
would it be the owner? That would be
maybe the service desk manager or some sort of customer service liaison for that particular. Maybe it's a shared service desk or something like that. The manager, director of that. I'm just spitballing, but I just don't feel like they're the same.
Yeah, we had some debates on that too, like who owns this particular place. So I'm thinking it's the owned by usually would be that person.
Between different organizations. You're gonna have to kind of figure out how to map it. There's no way to have one universal representation that's going to fit all orgs.
Yeah,
I agree with that. So it becomes a sort of a policy decision and governance, like what are we going to call these people and who are they going to actually be, right? Yeah, sure, I get that.
Maybe a mapping function between what the terms are in ServiceNow to what your organization calls them, just so you can get those lined up.
We do that with the CSDM, or we do that with the CMDB. So those roles that are in ServiceNow versus what the roles are in the organization. So absolutely.
I usually see this one as the business service owner, and then this is the technical service owner. That's the way, or the delivery manager, they're calling them here, which I think makes more sense because we have the technical services, so we don't want to confuse that with the technical, right? This is more the person responsible for the technology pieces versus the what we're doing for the business.
Hey, John, this is Rachel. And for those of you on the phone that don't know me, I'm one of John's peers. I spend a lot of time in the federal space doing this because they have even a different taxonomy than what we have in the commercial space. John, I'd be happy to put 30 minutes on your calendar and let's walk through what we've heard some of the different things called so that we can start to share what that translation is, because I think that's going to be huge to bringing the value out of our common data model.
So mapping these to those specific roles.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the other mapping here. Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
I have a starting point of about like 30 different things all the way up with the portfolio at the organization level. And then you break it down to the business level, the technical level, who's supported by, because I agree with what Jeff was saying, the customer service manager, that's really your support desk, your L1, L2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'll find time in our calendar. That way we have it that we can share before the next meeting.
I don't see, like usually here, I think on a business service, the way that I usually see it is this is L1, this is L2, and then this is L3 is usually you're walking through the services. So I don't really see an L1 and an L2 on the service offering usually in the conversations that we've had. It's just that main support group. And then they're passing it down the line for something else. But I'd be interested if you set it as a different way.
Yeah, especially when you're looking at the full life cycle, because not only do you have the incident management of it, you need to make sure you route enhancements and defects through to those people. And this is used in SPM now. Yeah,
which should land here, right on the BRM.
We're going to go into more details as Rachel gets into that. But at a high level, did I hear, because we're right in the middle of this right now, did I hear, because I was under the concept that the service owner would be on the technical side. Are we saying it's on the business side that they actually own that service?
Yeah, for a business, because we're defining a business service here. So it's going to be a business owner.
But I thought a business service is something that was delivered by the technology directly to the business.
And that's the delivery manager.
Okay, so only the owner and the delegate should be able to edit the business service. So, okay, so that would be someone on the business side actually owns that service.
Yes.
So the consumer owns the service, the person that's consuming it.
No, not the consumer, because it's the one that's, because they might have, like, we're defining HR right now, and there's going to be different consumers. There's going to be employees consuming the service, but this is like the HR service manager that's the owner.
Or if you look at, for example, your ERP, your supply chain would be your business leader, someone in there, and then you have your IT team that's accountable for it. And if one of your components from your ERP goes down, you want to be able to, or you want to make enhancements, maybe they want a new module to it, you want to be able to route that work to the right people.
Okay. So it's true that a business service is something that's delivered by TOS, consumed by the business, but then the business actually would own that someone on the business side would own that service.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And then they'd basically be agreeing to all the terms, right? So I'm going to go through an offering real quick, because this is the ones that's going to kind of tie back into the, so I'm going to just do onboarding, right? Because HR is our service, and onboarding is going to be one of the offerings within there. Now, if I go back into onboarding, they have these consumer types, right? The business service is going to be what it's classified as, because we're offering that again on the business side. We can do some criticality. There's different phases for that, just like the parent has, right? You can have them in pipeline, and then we're going to be able to push these in as we go through. So those are the new life cycles that are in there. And then here, onboard new employees. I want to just get through this one so we get it. Now the team here is the same, where you can have at the individual offering level. It could be different teams that own this. The delivery manager, it inherits the parent when you're defining it like this, but you can change that if you want to. There could be somebody specifically in the business that's responsible for onboarding, but you have that hierarchy where there's somebody that's responsible for all the HR services or owns all the HR services. And then there's somebody that owns the individual offerings. So it's up to you how that works. This is, again, your tier 1 support group, right? So you can define your groups here. And then the different stakeholders, the same thing that the parent has, you can override that at the individual offering level. For operations, we can go ahead. This is where we actually define those other people in here, and it's not explicitly stated either, like who's consuming this, right? So now we have to define that consumer. So you can have groups consume it, you can have individual people consume it, or actually whole companies, if you're providing these as external services, can consume these. So if you're doing things for outside your organization, external services instead of internal services, you can start using that company structure. So I'll do a group here. I'll just say they're consuming it. And then we can go into the financials if you're charging for this. So I was looking at some things on the Utah website, and I'm gonna ask Kelly some questions in a little bit, but there's a charge for doing things like hosting, right? So if there's a charge for that, you can put a price on there and then describe the unit here so that when it goes in your catalog, you have all that expressed. Right? And then there's the performance. So this is a big piece that the business is really interested in, because it's like, what are you actually providing for them as that delivery manager, right? So here is where I can start to get into the specific information that I'm defining and really put that on. Now, what I'm going to do for offering performance, just like I did for service performance, we're going to delay that. And we're not going to give it any performance metrics today, because we're going to say, look, this is before this thing hits. I want to start using DPM before it hits production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that right now. And we're going to go ahead, and what you have to do when you're in this wizard, right? You have to save all your offerings, and then you have to go ahead in the end and on here come in and submit this. So you're basically creating the service itself.
Good question. And I don't want to sidetrack this too far, but I always thought I understood offerings not to be like a sub because the way you define it looks like the business service was a grouping of sub-services, which you just declined the onboarding as an offering as opposed to another service. I thought offerings were for differentiated by region or differentiated by maybe service level, not by individual sub-services. I'm wondering, and maybe this is a better offline conversation. So,
no, this is a good conversation. So it could be all of the above. These offerings. If you're offering that onboarding service is what you're offering, you can have an onboarding service New York and onboarding. So you can have onboarding as the service, and then you can have as the offerings onboarding New York, onboarding Los Angeles, onboarding Denver.
No, I get that part, but I would have thought it would have been like the HR services would have been a grouping, and then there would have individual business services for onboarding, or other those sub services would actually be a business service, not an offering itself.
Yeah, it's all the above. Right? Like if you need to break down onboarding as a service and offer specific things in onboarding, then onboarding can be the service. If you're going to package up onboarding and provide everything in onboarding in one package, then you can make it the offering.
Then that would mean that the HR would be up into the taxonomy of the portfolio. Is that how that would work? If you had you wouldn't have HR service then.
Yeah, HR is part of what I'm doing is defining HR here, but you could move HR here at the portfolio level.
Right.
And that's why when a lot of people ask for examples, it's tough.
Yeah.
Because it's all right. You still have a lot of ways to define your business here and how you're providing it. Like if you're saying, hey, you can come in and onboard a new employee, but when you come in, you can register a new employee. So now you have to do onboarding as the business service and register new employee. But if you just offer onboarding as you just come to me and I'm going to do all the onboarding for you, then it's an offering in itself. I do everything for you because it's packaged.
That's another example of your mileage may vary. Figure out what works best for your organization and just define those rules though, so you get consistency.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what we found is as you run out of space, then you have to adjust. So maybe we thought HR was a service and you had different regions, but then you go, you know what? Onboarding is actually a service because we deliver onboarding in different ways to different departments or to different regions, and or we're structured that way. Then you have to shift everything up. You've ran out of room, so you have to move your business service up into the portfolio, and then your boarding becomes a service. So as you run out of room, you have to readjust. Yeah.
What about ServiceNow as a service? Would that be the service, and the offerings would be incident management, requests, knowledge? That's some questions that we're having.
So ServiceNow it depends on what you're actually giving people. Now, you're not just saying people, hey, you can have access to ServiceNow and you just give them a login. That would be a ServiceNow service, but that's usually not what you're doing, right? You're like, okay, you can come to ServiceNow and I could provide your team incident management, right? So your team that's managing incidents today on a spreadsheet, we can go ahead and give you access, then you would be offering incident management as a service to other departments, right? So there's all different ways you can package that. It's just like, think what Amazon would do. If I went and I said, I want to stop doing change management in my organization on a spreadsheet. So, but Central IT has ServiceNow. Can they give me change management in a package, right? So I don't have to negotiate with ServiceNow. I just get change management, right? So you have to think about how that packaging is to the business, so that you're removing, because a service, right, is you're removing all those complexities and giving them just what they need. And we're just having this conversation the other day about a computer. Like, we don't want to say, if I come in there for a computer, I come in here for support, or I come in here for a new computer, I come here to get software installed. It's all the same group, right? I just have a computer service and I know who to call if I have a problem with it or I need something new. So it's all packaged together for them, so they don't have to know all those separate pieces.
But we can offer our customers just knowledge.
Yeah, just knowledge or just catalog.
Right? Would that be an offering at that level?
Yeah, you can define the offering at that level. So you can say it's knowledge management might be the service, and create new knowledge article might be the offering, or retire knowledge article might be another offering, right? If that's what you want to let them do, is put their own articles in or retire their articles, you can define it like that as well.
That starts getting pretty deep.
Yeah, John, I'd be sorry, I got to interject. I'd be careful about calling those specific transactional type of things services. we tend to look at them more as requestable items, transaction against those services, like add a new knowledge article, retire a knowledge article. Yeah. But
well, that is
management,
when you're here though, right? This is where you're actually attaching to those catalog items. So if you have a catalog item that lets you put in a new article, right? So that's these where is it in the details?
Right, but your onboarding, your service offering could be knowledge management that links to catalog items for, requesting the creation of knowledge, or a catalog item that asks you to retire a knowledge article or to provide feedback for knowledge.
So what you
could
build
out knowledge for a specific thing, but the offering itself would be knowledge management. Now you wouldn't have an offering that said request a knowledge article or request creation of a knowledge article.
Right. So then you would put all those catalog items on one offering.
Yeah.
And as long as it's the same team, you can do that. If it's a different team that would delete articles or retire articles, and a different team that would create them, I would probably break those out into two services, because two service offerings, because a lot of the offerings are about the structure of the team that's supporting them. Right. But if it's one, like you said, if it's anything to do with knowledge, and that could be the offering.
But the idea of services is that you can be matrixed, right? That's the whole concept of a service offering, is it can have matrix support.
Yeah.
But the user doesn't care. They just request it, and we know how to route it the right way in the back end. And that's the same thing with the catalog item. So what you'd have to make sure is that they don't have different SLAs with what they respond back, right?
Yeah, different
because the
SLAs
SLA would be at the offering level,
or if you're
at
using
the service.
or if you're using this team structure here, right, to route it, then you would break them out.
Yeah, but yes, you could do that, or you could just route at a catalog item level and not worry about it.
Yep, it gets down to the same thing, right? It kind of depends how you're going to do it.
Right, it's what works for your organization.
Yeah.
Hey,
Let me,
John, if I may ask, is there an opportunity for a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So
why am I getting
I know
this?
that's Mark Bodman had mentioned that for those who've come from Quebec, we have a taxonomy that's based on the old one table that hosts all the services, business and technical, and I know they split them up. So I know he had mentioned that there would be an offering. I mean, they would provide a wizard capability to convert those. Now that we're in Rome, and now with that's my first question. And the second question is, does the offering performance, does that supersede the CSAT and the portfolio metric in the old service portfolio management? Like, the where you could specify at a node level or a taxonomy level the different
Can't get this to save. It doesn't. That still holds.
Okay.
Right. So it's still going to go ahead and I don't know why I'm not able to save this. That you'll still have those surveys. I think that's what you're talking about, the CSAT surveys.
Right.
And I'm going to take a look at those really quick. All right. So let me go back to this. I was going to show. I'm going to use one example instead because I want to move on here. So what we want to do is we want to get that one service defined, right? And then what I can do is I have a choice here. We've been talking about enterprise portfolios and building that out. Now let's say I don't have that built out yet. I'm just getting started. What I can do here is I can come up in a personal portfolio, and this could be just to get started. This service portfolio, I could just put the HR stuff in there, right? That could be what I use for my node right now. So I'm not using an enterprise portfolio here. I'm using a personal portfolio, right? So I can come in here and I could just say new services that I'm doing for HR. And then what I can do with this service is I can use this temporarily, right? just to give people views into these things that I'm building for them before I get into that big structure that we've been talking about for taxonomies. And now this is a way, I don't know if Elle came on, but like in Montana, we can use this temporarily because we're doing 14 services for this one area, right? So we can use these personal portfolios until we get to that point. Now, if I want to add things here, right, what I can do is I can add them directly in, and I made a backup service just in case mine went. So what I do is I have the test is my business service. I can also put my individual offerings into that personal portfolio. And then what it does is it's going to give you a direct view. I always do that. So I can show you all what I miss here. On this one, you have to make sure when you do this, you go ahead and add them here. And that's what so I'll click those, add those selected items into that portfolio. Then I go next. And now what I have, I attached my catalog item. I created a new service offering. I created a new service. And then basically what I have is I have a little portfolio with that service and or the offerings in there, right? So when I say create this, it's going to give me the opportunity to go ahead and share it with somebody. So I have this personal portfolio. So let's say before they're even live or before I want them to enter that big enterprise portfolio, I can now share this portfolio with somebody on the list. Right, so Kelly Jones, I could send an invite to Kelly to start participating in this service. Now, what's nice about this is they're able to come in and see that individual service called test, and they'll have that info in there, right? So they'll know who am I supporting on the teams, what's the description, I have the owner information. So already this is providing value because it's pulling a lot of that data together. It's what you're agreeing on before you actually build the service, right? So before the ideas come in or the demands come in, what is the definition for this? And that's, you know, everything from the end users that are coming in to all the individual offerings that would actually go into that service, right? So you can do that at that level, at the test level, or I can come back and I can also go down and drill into my individual offering and see where my offering is. So I think there's a lot of people that are, and this is, we're going to ask for comments from Elle and from Kelly in a minute here. When we go into these, what is that minimum level that we need before this becomes useful? Like, do I have to get all of my stuff attached and have my incident workers labeling things by service offering, or can I start here?
John,
Right,
I have a question. So is the wizard you ran us through with certain attributes that we could define right out of the gate. Do we have to actually go to the CI record then that's created to add our own attributes? Because when we build out a service catalog, we generally have a bunch of stuff that we include about the service that may not be included in the wizard.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you want to come in and you'd have to go back to that one. If I want to come back in now and say for that offering, I want to go look at that offering I just built, like the test one I'm working on. And I want to go ahead and edit that that test off that I'm doing now because my HR one didn't work for some reason. You can go back into that individual CI and edit that and have it show up. So one of the things that I'm asking them to put in there on test offering that's not in there is what's in scope and what's out of scope. So you'd have to come into the individual CI to change something like that or some other things. So you still can't do everything in the wizard.
Do you see new stuff being added to the wizard as requirements and new features are requested?
Yeah, I would think so. I would even a jump out to the record would be nice.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, one of the things that I would add in here is there's the in scope and out of scope related lists that show up on the offering here. So when I drill into that offering, that's one of the parts inside of the info is what did we say was in scope and what was out of scope. So web is in scope, mobile's out of scope. But you'd have to go into the individual records to add that on the info tab. So I think building this info tab is a really good contract with the business, right? That's why I think it's useful coming out of the gate. All right, let me go through this. Good conversation. Thanks, everybody. I want to go in a little bit now and look at one of the things we've been doing is these are all the different types of records that now attach, right? So once you build this in DPM, one of the use cases in DPM is to bring all this stuff we're doing on behalf of that service together, right? So it could be an idea, it could be a demand, it could be an epic, any of those things that get labeled with that service and service offering that I just created. Any of those things that get labeled can now be attached to that item, including, right, incidents from the past. So if I go in and I'm going to do a quick demo on here, but if I go in now, and let's just take this test offering because my HR one didn't work out. But if I go and I create that list, right, all those tasks that I bring in, the service offering and the business service have been moved down to the task table. So that goes all the way down to that level. So if I go down and I do task.list, you'll be able to see business service and service offering on all those tasks, right? So I can see that I have all the changes that are coming in here. I should see if we see some ideas, right? Because I'll just attach an idea to that new offering, and you could start doing this right away because that's how these things are going to get attached in the plan and build phase. So if I want to go into task type here. Created, but I had a new one for idea. Oh, I know what. Go into my filter real quick, right? So this, if you want to go into my favorites, that's the filter I did create on here. And I think what happens here is this idea. We have a couple of them in there. Because what's going to happen is once you run the collection here, it's going to, I don't know if a lot of people are in here. Once I run the collection, it would actually get it out. So I'm going to go into the idea table directly. Oh man, I am having some trouble on my instance. Okay, scrap that little demo. Basically what I was going to show you is that when you come back on the, is anybody else attached to the instance right now? Interesting that. All right, let me wrap up here and ask Kelly. So basically what you could do is what I was supposed to do there is be able to take and link some of those things. Right, so I can link the offerings a couple of different ways. I went into that list and I can go into that list and I could just click on the business service and put our new business service name in there. So I can do HR and onboarding. If there's ways I can find incidents that are related to that onboarding service, I can go back after the incidents were done, relabel them, and then there's a job that you can run that would actually bring those incidents and attach it to that offering so that I have the metrics for it. The same thing with an idea. If I come and add an idea, what will happen is that idea will now be attached so that that business owner can go to the plan phase and see there's ideas and there's demands in there. And that's the main thing behind mapping. So if you're mapping those static ones, like the ideas and demands, you don't have to run a job to have those linked. But on the incidents, you do have to have a job. Now, this is a script that I wrote with Lou. What we're trying to do here is Lou was already with his incidents. He was using the service offering in the CI field. So what we did is we created this little script and we said, go through all of the incidents and go back 90 days. I just had 2 in here for my testing, but go back and get all of those incidents that were on that time period. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if the CI class is a service offering, the one in the CI field in the incident, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that service offering and I'm going to update the service offering in the incident, and I'm going to update the parent as the service offering's parent, which is the business service itself. So you can get creative here, and even though you don't have a history for that service because you just built it, you can go back in time and take all of these tasks that were done against this service in. So one of the ways you can do it is, this case, we knew the service offering was in the CI field, but a lot of times you can say, hey, that support group is the one that always fixes or always takes those onboarding requests, right? So you can go back and any correlation you can do to past history to bring those incidents and attach them to that new business service will give you a good historical perspective without doing a lot. A little bit of a warning here, when we did run this, it sent emails to everybody on those incidents.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, I want to say that for sure.
Yeah. And right here, I think this is what fixes it, but I haven't tested it yet. Right, so there's a solution. I think if you just go incidents, set workflow false, it will suppress the emails.
Yeah,
so you probably want to.
We ended up doing that, John.
So that workflow.
Yeah, I believe that's what we did, and I'll dig out the script and send it to you, and you can look at it.
This is a very short call, and it's all about the final experience and on insurance. But before I
That's not me, by the way. If you're talking, John, we don't hear you.
I think somebody muted me instead of the person that was at the noise. So when you can you hear me now though?
Yes, sir.
All right. So with the surveys, there are still surveys. This is the default survey that gets sent out when you define a service. So what they'll do is there's parameters for those surveys. And this is a good way to start getting some data into the operation piece, is anybody who subscribes to that offering and uses it gets surveyed every so often. So there's some rules in there, and this is the default that gets sent. And this is a way to get some data in for the business right away, that qualitative data about how that offering is doing. So it's not a question about how well did we do supporting that offering. It's about how well is the offering, right? The way it's being asked, your experience with the offering is what they're asking about, not your experience with the support person, like most of the surveys are. So if you do nothing, you just set that up, that should be enabled out of the box, the send surveys feature. Is anybody getting these today? Anybody using these? Okay, so if we did like our...
Is that part of the CSAT in DPM? In other words, when you set those up, are these the same or are they different?
Yeah, this is the CSAT that comes into that CSAT metric on the run tab of the service offering. And this is the same.
How is that different than the out of the box surveys for like service desk or incident, as part of ITSM incident management, where you have certain surveys that go out when the incident is resolved and they get a survey, it's out of the box. Is it the same?
Yeah, it's using the same mechanism, but this one is built specifically for services. So in the service, it's going to, in the service offering, you have a survey frequency field in there. And that's what you have to fill out in order to get that going.
Mm.
Yeah, but that should be a good way to get metrics in right away. Even if people aren't, like I said, classifying incidents yet or classifying changes against the incident. Right, so that's
quick question, John.
Yeah.
How much of what you've demoed here is San Diego specific versus some maybe available previous to San Diego?
The DPM I showed you, I don't know how much different it would be prior to San Diego, because there is 2 different releases on Rome and San Diego.
Yep.
But everything, you have to be at least Rome or above for any of this stuff.
What was it, services builders in specific?
Service Builder, I think, comes in Rome, in the later versions of Rome, though.
Late. Okay, I didn't know there was a later version of Roam. Okay, coll.
Roam patch 5 or above, or else you can't get DPM and Service Builder to work.
Got it.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. And it says that in the store when you go to the store and get that. It'll say that in there. But yeah, the Service Builder is still a little tricky. Like I had problems today with it. If you name it, I think what happened is I named it the same as something else, and that's what's conflicting. But I'll have to go back and check why that doesn't work. But usually I went through it a bunch of times before this, and it was pretty smooth. All right, so Elle, are you on?
I sure am. Hi, John.
Hi. I was wondering, I know you're looking at this, and you have some views on DPM today. What do you guys? What's your thinking in terms of when you would be close enough to share it with somebody, right? Like the minimum viable service offering definition.
I think it sounds like there's some mature folks in terms of DPM use in this audience or this user group, and I'm a relatively new member. So I just want to say right off the bat that thank you so much for the discussion and the questions and just the suggestions for those of us who are new and getting started. It's so nice to hear from others who've kind of blazed the trail or been through similar challenges. So that being said, I'm not a presenter, and if you want to make me a presenter, John, I'm happy to share my screen. I've kind of fumbled my way through this a little bit with your help, John, and what we've basically done is we started at what I would consider the lowest level of project management. So we started with project tasks and user stories, and we're using hybrid project management. I realize I'm leaving out some context that I'll go back and fill in, but basically we started with project tasks, user stories, aggregated those up to project phases, and then aggregated that up into an investment dashboard and related all of the levels of information to services and service offerings. Now, looking at it, I don't think it's perfect. I definitely think we're going to want to adapt before we go to production with this. But I've learned a lot about what my leadership needs to make critical decisions about issues, timeframes, resources. So the things that we typically struggle getting visibility on or escalating with the correct visibility, this tool has really helped us with. So the context that I feel like is missing is my name is Elle Arredondo. I'm with the Montana Department of Transportation, and I'm managing one of our governor's initiatives to take one of our agencies in the enterprise 100% digital. So I'm a project manager for Department of Transportation, but I'm actually managing a project for the state of Montana enterprise to deliver 100% digital transformation for our Department of Commerce. So basically what that means is we have a bunch of staff from a variety of agencies working on this enterprise project for our governor. And as you can, I'm sure, imagine, like there's a lot of attention. We need their correct reactions to get engaged, involved.
You should be able to share now, Al.
Okay. Well, I don't know. So just to do a quick overview of some of the things I mentioned, and I apologize for those of you who've kind of been there, done that, because I feel like this might be a boring part of the presentation. But where we started with ideas, we converted those ideas to demands, we prioritized the demands and converted those to projects, and we chose to do hybrid project execution so that we could, and I know I'm flipping fast, but the idea was we wanted to be able to track the project lifecycle as well as the development lifecycle. We use the Scrum framework for the development lifecycle, and our Scrum Masters wanted to be able to track certain Scrum events and activities. And then we wanted to be able, because I'm in one agency doing work for another agency, we wanted to offer transparency into the service that we were delivering. So the short story is we configured the project management stuff to act a certain way. So because we knew what metrics we wanted, and then we connected that to, or we're trying, I guess I'm in the process of connecting that data to a digital portfolio. Yeah, please jump in, John. I never remember where to click. I want to show them the digital
click on
commerce.
portfolio now. Instead of doing a personal portfolio, we did a little mini demo. We did a little mini, click on that one.
Yeah.
And then click on portfolio, and I think you should have one in there. We defined a couple of them, but we defined one just for that one.
So we tried a couple of different things. John and I have had lots of conversations about taxonomy, and what Montana is fundamentally trying to do for its citizens and constituents is build a platform that allows our customer to come in any door, and it's not going to be the wrong door. And what that translates to is they don't need to know that Department of Administration administers or owns that service. They just need to know that if they want to know what our road conditions are, to access this door, and then we get them to our road condition map. So that's kind of the driving vision behind this.
If you click on view details, because I think commerce is your service, right? I think, yeah.
I think the way we've got this structured right now is commerce is our service offering because we're taking them 100% digital. But then as you get into deeper levels of information, you see that we have 11 approved demands. It started out as like 25, and we were able to consolidate those. And then getting to the build portion of this, you can see that we have 14 active projects. Full transparency, I have not had a chance to do my status report, so these numbers are actually 2 weeks behind. But you can see what's really great about this, and I'm going to nerd out for a second. You can see if you're trending on schedule. So it shows you your schedule performance, and that's been a huge missing detail for our sponsors, because that's one of the most critical reasons projects don't end on time is we don't get their involvement in removing obstacles as soon as we should. Anyway, lots of really cool stuff happening. And then we're not in the run portion yet. None of these are actually in production yet. And we're still in the process of defining some of these elements, but we've already gotten a lot of value out of configuring this a certain way. And just as kind of a shameless plug, we started with the end in mind. I asked all of my sponsors and the governor, like, what critical data do you need from me to know that I understood the assignment and I'm going to get an A+? And we basically configured the system to demonstrate that data. It's all a work in progress and we're still in dev, but we're basically proving the concepts that we're trying to prove.
Yeah.
Any questions? I know I've covered this really fast. Sorry, John.
Yeah, I love the roll up for it, right? It's finally a place to roll up, so you don't have to say, hey, here's your project views for the service owner, here's your incident views, here's your change views. Right there.
Well, and we've started that from a project perspective, and we just haven't transformed this or translated it to the service part yet, but we've been able to roll these up at a really high level. We're not tracking budget, we're not tracking finances at this point. We're just tracking red, amber, green. We want to know, are we on track for schedule? Are we on track for scope? That'd
be cool. Maybe we have a filtered jump out to here if you want the details on the projects or have those status reports.
Well, I think what they care about really is this stuff. They want to know if we've missed key milestones, if there's critical issues. Like, this is really what my sponsors care about right here.
Yep.
Anyway. All right. If there's no questions for me.
Kelly, I think you guys were looking at this too, right? And like what the initial look is going to be. Did you have some thoughts on this? I know you guys are doing this in different places. Like where did you see it coming together in here? Like what?
Yeah, I think, sorry, can you hear me? just make sure. Okay. No, so we were looking at it as we're building out. So as you showed kind of the data model there and how we're building up our CMDB, kind of looking forward looking, what is our evolution? What is our next step? Now, admittedly, we were thinking service mapping and APM, and I think it was kind of through your suggestion of, you know, APM could be a much bigger endeavor. Do you want to take a look at DPM and see if this is something that can kind of help you get started on that journey? So we're right now, I would say, only in the evaluation stages. So when Elle says, hey, we're still in dev, I'm like, oh, we're still talking about it. So take a step back even further. A little bit of context, I work for the state of Utah. We are the division of IT services, so our consolidated IT services. My customers are either the agencies, the other state agencies that we serve, or DTS, sorry, acronyms, terrible, the division of IT consumers, our employees. So basically for us, our way forward would be twofold. It would be what's worked really well for us is always to find a champion, someone who can kind of understand the services that they provide and has enough structure in place in order to build out a meaningful overview so that you could see a service that has a plan around it, can show a build, can show the run, can show all of that in a meaningful way. Because we aren't always mature enough in that area, and I can explain why, that we wouldn't be able as an organization to just dive in. And I think it speaks to some of the conversation that even we had early in this meeting of terminology, right? So we've got to all kind of come to a consensus about what it means to provide a service and what it means to have a title. So when you're building out that service, what is your service and who are the people that are appropriate to list here? So that has always been a bit of a roadblock for us, especially when you look at APM. So what is an application service versus an application as you're building out your data model? And an area that can immediately paralyze us is, you know, you can't even fill out that form because you can't come to a consensus on what each of those fields are or who the appropriate person is. So we've learned a little bit of how that can be paralyzing, but also to lean on, you know, there's a method to the madness as to why ServiceNow named a field a certain way and how it works in conjunction when you think about CSDM and service mapping and APM and how it each should support the other. And so keeping that in mind, it's not that we're going to try and shove our business and our terminology into ServiceNow and expect it to work. We have to find that balance of maybe where we're a little unique, but also leaning on the fact that we need to understand the reasons why a field is that, you know, named that way, or why a role has this expectation or this function in ServiceNow. And so just being able to sometimes as a business disagree, but commit, right? So commit to that model.
Yeah, that's why I'm hoping that form, that info form on the business service could be the start of that agreement, right? It's something standard instead of it being in 10 places, it's in one. So that's one advantage, but hopefully we can make those other fields work for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. All right, thanks. The other thing I just threw in here real quick, because what we're talking about is really this delivery. We've been kind of referring back to this. So we looked at some of Elle's ideas and demands, and we're attaching them to the services that we're building, the business services. So we've been talking about this chain of things a lot. There's a really good update from Rob, who is one of the big evangelists in the IT for IT space. Right, so a lot of what we're doing, we're aligning, and you'll see that in the digital portfolio, right? There's plan, there's build, and then there's run, which basically is broken down into these two value streams in IT for IT. So you can see the service now in a couple of different parts, and you can kind of visualize how we're tying some of these things in. the different stages. So somebody asked me, is there a new updated version of, what ServiceNow products map to which IT for IT areas? Mark's going to update that when V3 comes out. But I thought this is a really good graphic that Rob had that I would share, and I just circled the ServiceNow ones. So just as next steps, I put these two things out there. So there is training on this, and hopefully they do a lot better than I did on my demo today. I'm sure they will, but this will let you get started with DPM. And last time we talked, this wasn't out, so it's brand new. And I didn't take it yet, but I will be sure to go through it if you guys wanted to try it out. So I got that linked, and then also Rob's comments on kind of the landscape for the vendors. In that, I thought that was a really good article, and it's relevant to what we've been talking about, because we are talking about bringing new services to market, and this is the tooling landscape of all that's out there that we have to work with. So a lot of the discussions I've been having on this thing is interoperability. Like, we're not using ServiceNow for this section, we're using Jira, or we're using these tools over here, right? So we have to kind of make accommodations for those things and not just assume everybody is going to be on the platform for everything. So that's a good way to think about it if you are being brought into discussions with your leadership. I thought this infographic might help you here. And that's it. I will post these two things just so you have them. I'll post links to those, but I'll also put the deck up so that everybody will be able to use that. And that's it for today. We're a little bit over. So apologies for that. Thank you, Kelly. And thank you, Elle, for chiming in today. Sorry we cut a little short, but the discussion went a little broader than we thought. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you in a few weeks.
Thank you, John.